Hi everybody, I'm Mary Lawrence, and today I'll be presenting on cell phones in the classroom, how digital tools can create community and foster student engagement in the composition classroom. Research shows that more than 80% of students use their phones at least once per class, and students generally believe that this is an acceptable practice. Faculty, on the other hand, have a different point of view. Some say no, never. Students should not be allowed to use cell phones in the classroom because it can impede learning by being a distraction to other students and the instructor. On the other hand, some faculty say yes, absolutely, cell phones should be allowed because they can be used to promote student agency and equity for students who need them to augment class instruction, and they increase student engagement and motivation. So even though nearly all college students have cell phones, 85% of faculty wanted to ban cell phones from the classroom. Now I want you to consider the impact of these rigid cell phone policies on students who see mobile devices as a right or an extension of themselves. So banning them can feel dismissive, and it can create an atmosphere of policing, which can be traumatizing for some students. And we know that promoting inclusion is much more effective in our classrooms, and this can also apply to the use of mobile devices. In fact, research has shown that net generation students learn better by doing and discovering. Mobile learning, or M-learning, engages students as active participants in the learning process. And we know that active learning is an effective method for reinforcing information and enhancing comprehension. So why not consider mobile devices as tools to aid in this process? And this is what I do in my first year composition classes. So for example, instead of having a 20-page long syllabus, I have a shorter syllabus that has hyperlinks with information that students can get outside of the syllabus. It's very interactive that way. I also incorporate multimodal texts and activities into the curriculum. And I give students the option of choosing what composition format they prefer, such as writing an essay that has hyperlinks, or doing a slideshow, or doing a video. And because students are often on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I take advantage of this by using these tools, these social media platforms, to create activities around them. And this gives a collaborative learning environment where students work together to curate content, share websites, and share information. And all of these are developing these 21st century media literacy and critical digital literacy skills, which are so important these days. So for some examples of multimodal text that I use, some videos, podcasts, social media, interactive images, but then also art, advertising, anything with a message that can be deconstructed. So I'll give you a few examples. On the first day of class, I usually do a class mission statement for my English 101 students. And I used to do this in person on the whiteboard, but I found that using Jamboard online to answer these questions, what does the classroom feel like, how do classmates act, and how does the teacher act, it elicited more authentic responses. I think students were less inhibited because they didn't have to walk to the front of the room and have all eyes on them. So instead, they post sticky notes with their responses, and they really enjoyed doing this, and they just pop on the screen. And then after this, they work together in small groups to develop a class mission statement, and then they fill in their own ideas. And this is something we've referred to throughout the semester, not necessarily as a contract or anything formal, but students actually become engaged in this process, and they feel responsible that way. And then for writing activities, I usually begin with a question, or I use poll everywhere so I can get students starting to engage and interact using a mobile device. So for this, it's a question that leads into a unit on class and race and culture in our society. So I ask the question, what does it mean to be an American? And then they give their responses, and it appears as this word cloud so that they can see the biggest word, freedom, is what most students have typed as their response, but then sometimes there'll be words like the word freedom in quotation marks, and it gives us an opportunity to have a discussion and explore that further. From there, I go to Google Docs, and this is a fun way to get students writing and engaging with each other's writing so that they're developing a community of writers sharing ideas together. So they answer that same question, what does it mean to be an American? And I talk about what the dominant narrative is and the critical race theory term counter stories and counter narratives, and they learn about that. And then they start to see that there are other identities that can be represented that way. And they learn about these, again, I incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion lessons into my teaching along with the digital tools. So they learn, they reflect, and they see what other students write in the Google Doc. Then I also invite them to contribute their own ideas into what I'm calling an American Identity Padlet, or a counter-story Padlet. So on the left you see a list of the traditional American canon, and then examples on the right of counter-story poetry and essays and music and art and videos. And if you go to Padlet, you can see the full list of all these. So I ask students to contribute to them. So this becomes a working document where we're all learning from each other. And then for a reading response activity, I again use the digital tools and social media. So for this, it's an Instagram activity where they create a meme. They choose one sentence from a text that resonates with them. So they read a text by David Sedaris and by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and they watched a video from each of the authors, and they chose one line that resonated with them. And then they created these images or memes in Canva. And then they posted them all on this Jamboard, which we referred to through the semester as writing advice from the experts. So they learn what the experts have to say, and they see their struggles, and then they can relate to them. So students responded to these activities in very positive ways. You can see Jeff says, "It was fun. Once I played around a while, I figured it out." And I think this is really important for learning, that fun and play engage that creative process, and it helps get students curious about the material. And they're interacting, and they're fully engaged, and they're motivated to learn when they're using these tools. So some takeaways for the composition classroom is, as I've been saying, student engagement. Embrace technology and mobile learning rather than shun it from the classroom. Encourage multimodal self-expression, so not only in the material that you present to your students, but in the way that they construct their compositions. And then this, in turn, creates a collaborative community of writers where they're engaging with each other as well as with the material. And this way it becomes a very student-centric, learning-centered environment. And this also leads to self-efficacy. Course content is relevant to students' lives because it incorporates real-world examples and technologies. It's fun. Using low-stakes scaffolded assignments has instant gratification, and students learn, and they are having, they're enjoying the process. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like something that they dread doing, even if they don't see themselves yet as writers. And also incorporate student feedback into instruction. I do surveys twice in the semester, and I get feedback from them to find out what's working, what's not working, and then I tweak my activities based on that. And ultimately, it also encourages civic engagement. When they learn how to use these tools in the classroom, they become more engaged in their communities around them, and they're more curious and interested in participating in a way that's more productive on social media. And then for community, this establishes an atmosphere of mutual trust. When you respect students to manage their time, to be able to use these as tools rather than as distractions. Of course, it's not going to be 100% perfect, but none of us is perfect. We're all human. So we're honoring our students and their diverse needs. We're promoting mutual respect and understanding through these practices. And this in turn increases student satisfaction with the course, as well as with the instruction. And then it fosters achievement in the learning outcomes, and it really increases the student retention. I find that students stick around longer and they really enjoy doing these activities. So when we embrace these digital tools, students are free to develop their talents, skills, and abilities and express themselves creatively with power and conviction. And some sources that I've included are video tools, presentation tools, and podcast tools, as well as whiteboard, curating, design tools, and web design. And some references that you can refer to if you're looking for additional information on this topic. And I thank you for your time, and I invite you to collaborate with me in visiting my personal site and connecting by email. Thank you so much.